All right, we'll give it one additional minute to let live stream set. All right, folks, we are at 8:31, which means it's time to get started. We are here for another installation of Coffee Chats with Economic Alliance Snohomish County. Good morning, everyone. I would like to ask that each of you who are joining us, please put into the chat who you are and what organization you're with. And as this conversation will be focused on something very near and dear to our hearts and very impactful and important to us moving forward, it is the regional transportation priority projects. And with that in mind, we have some amazing panelists and leaders from our Snohomish County community that I would like to introduce to you all. First and foremost, we have the very amazing Mayor Barb Tolbert of the city of Arlington. Mayor Tolbert, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
And next we have the very debonair and awesome gentleman himself, Mr. Mayor John Nehring of the city of Marysville. Mayor Nehring, thank you.
Thank you, Gary. It's great to be here.
We also have two individuals who represent Snohomish County and Snohomish County Public Works. Number one, we have Mrs. Kelly Snyder, who is the Public Works Director at Snohomish County Public Works. Kelly, welcome. And we also have, last but not least, with his very smooth backdrop of the Snohomish County Public Works screen, we have Doug McCormick, who is the Deputy Director and County Engineer at Snohomish County Public Works. Doug, welcome.
Thank you, Gary. Welcome and glad to see you.
All right. Well, folks, this presentation is brought to you by the group that I just described to you, but also Economic Alliance Snohomish County, which I am President and CEO of. And we are very much excited to talk today about a discussion focused on regional transportation priorities. So without further ado, I'm going to step back and I'm going to let the very awesome Mayor Barb Tolbert, she is going to provide an update, and then we'll move on from there with other presentations as well. So Mayor Tolbert, you have the floor.
Thank you, Gary. And thank you everyone for being here this morning. We're going to talk, my understanding is we're going to talk about Snohomish County regional priority transportation projects. And the project that I want to talk about this morning is SR 531. So let me bring up some slides here. I thought I would start out with just a little bit of a historical perspective on this corridor. So this is a little bit of a historical. SR 531 is a 2-lane state highway that runs from I-5 to Highway 9, and it's like the spine of the Cascade Industrial Center for the Center of Transportation. We show records of this same road alignment going back to 1908 when it was an unpaved road section. And then it was still a 2-lane road in 1974. And you can see the growth around this corridor over the last 80 years. There's been a record amount of growth around there. In 1992, the Washington State Department of Transportation assumed the ownership and operation of this roadway. And therein probably were some of our challenges. So the SR 531 widening project, this is, as I said, it's a spine that runs right through the center of the Cascade Industrial Center. And when it was announced as part of the Connecting Washington Transportation Package in 2015, we saw a tremendous amount of interest in the properties around there begin to move. We've had over $2 billion worth of investment by businesses in building out the Cascade Industrial Center. We are working jointly with the city of Marysville to do a layout of an integrated transportation network that will help foster this growth and the jobs that it will provide. The east-west state route connects to I-5 and SR9, as I said before, and the main north-south roads through the Cascade Industrial Center all connect to SR 531. In addition to supporting a growing industrial center, this road is a vital connector for pass-through traffic from Arlington, Marysville, and northeast Snohomish County. We see a load of about 30,000 vehicles per day on this road. Specifically to the project, this is a close-up look of the widening of 531 project from 63rd Avenue to 67th. That's 43rd Avenue to 67th Avenue. 43rd is, for those of you who need more visuals, is right by the Walmart on 531 that runs through there. It's our focus is on the commercial and industrial development that is happening around the area. As I said, when the state funded the Connecting Washington package with a gas tax, this project was part of that package, and developers such as Amazon, SmartCap, North Point Investments, and the Outpost have purchased property abutting the corridor and developed the industrial centers within the states, with the state's promise of widening the highway that will be constructed to help transport freight and workers. This corridor was designated a National Critical Urban Freight Corridor in 2022. And so this makes the state a full partner with us in the success of the Cascade Industrial Center and the growth of jobs that were promised by developing it. In 2022 and finishing this year, one of the developers, Amazon, completed a $2.5 million investment in 531 by jumpstarting the widening project to support the freight and worker movement around its new facility. This project is phase one of a two-part project on the Snohomish County regional priority transportation list. When we first started talking about this project with the state, the widening went all the way from 43rd up to Highway 9. And at the state's suggestion, we developed it into two phases to make the funding more palatable. So phase two takes the widening from 67th up to Highway 9, and that remains on the county's priority list. So let me stop sharing my slides. That's my overview of SR 531.
Outstanding. Thank you, Mayor Tolbert. We appreciate that, and we'll pass it on to Mayor Nehring.
Great, thank you, Gary. Can you see my slide there? Perfect. Well, I want to thank you all, first of all, for the opportunity to share. Mayor Tolbert did a really good job, I think, of explaining some of the importance of 531. I think we kind of look at 531 and 156 as really interrelated in a lot of ways. The 172nd interchange right now is tough on both of our communities. And as we put in the Cascade Industrial Center and we have all these businesses moving in, we have to have both of these particular transportation projects go through as soon as possible. So with regards to 156, I think what you're looking at there is, this is an area where we put in a overcrossing back in, I think it was about 2008 or 2009.
Mayor Nehring,
yes.
I just want to make sure you're advancing your screen for us as well.
Oh, sorry. Hold on just a second. There you go. Did that advance?
Yes, sir. You got it.
Okay, sorry. Thanks for that, Gary. Yeah, so in about 2008, 2009, the city decided to work with the local property owners and form an LID. And so we put in an overcrossing there with always the intent that become a full interchange. And so it's $8 million of city money, $8 million of a local improvement district. We put that overcrossing in, and all along for the last 20 years or so, we've been protecting the manufacturing and industrial zoning out to the east of I-5 there for the what would eventually become the Cascade Industrial Center that Mayor Tolbert also mentioned. And so, the overpass was completed, and in 2013, after that, the plan of putting the LID together and doing all the things that we did. And then we worked also on private and local investments in roads. And then we moved forward with working hard on the Connecting Washington package, which was also something I think that funded a lot of projects throughout Snohomish County. And in 2015, the 156th interchange was actually funded with the Connecting Washington package, designed to be built out in 2025 to 2031. And so why is that important? Well, you know, the Cascade Industrial Center looks to add about 10,000 new jobs. I think it's already, even when the interchange was funded, it kind of put that whole area on the map, particularly for the Marysville side. And I think Mayor Tolbert recognized that also with 531. We've had far faster development in the Cascade Industrial Center than we anticipated, which is putting further transportation pressures on us for there. And so this is a critical project. And I think it's crucial, obviously, to the vitality, the growth, the traffic safety, the emergency responsibility. But it also works in conjunction with 172nd. If we don't take the pressure off 172nd, then we're really having a significant problem. I put up a map here of some of the other localized improvements that we'll need to be doing in the city of Marysville and that we're already working on, taking 156th further east and connecting into 152nd there, improvements that'll need to be made on 51st Avenue Northeast. And then you see the kind of the local road network that wraps around 156th to 47th and then 160th as well. So along with this interchange, we're also doing a number of local road improvements to keep the traffic circulating, you know, east and west, north and south in there. One of the significant problems or issues that we have now is, you know, we've had about $1.3 billion worth of private sector investment in the Cascade Industrial Center just in the last few years. And so a lot of these individuals have made these investments with the anticipation of this interchange and also a 531 and some of the other investments. And you know, there's some concern with the governor's budget that seeks to move this interchange to a 2031 to 2037 completion date, which is 6 years later than was planned. Well, that was very alarming to particularly, you know, to all of us, I think, and particularly the private sector interests who had made those investments. And so we're working closely with our state legislators to try and here's I put up some of the folks that are providing overwhelming support to this effort, but working with our legislators just to try and keep that timeline in place. It's really, really critical, I think, for a host of reasons. And I guess I'll close with this. You know, we sent a letter with all these folks signed on. EASC has been a great supporter of this as well in the county and both cities and a number of others. But I think, you know, as a state, if we're serious about economic development, when we make transportation infrastructure promises, we've got to make sure we keep those, right? Because when you have 1.3 billion in private sector investment, and then all of a sudden you come along and say, well, actually that interchange that you invested anticipating is now going to come 6 years later. That's a really tough message to send. And what does it send to future people that want to invest, not just in the Cascade Industrial Center, but anywhere in the Puget Sound or in Washington State when they can't count on those things coming through that are promised. So that's kind of where we're at with that. And I appreciate the opportunity to share a little bit about it. Happy to take questions later. And let me stop my screen share so you can move on, Gary.
All right. Thank you, Mayor Nehring. I think that was very helpful to give some context. And I like your point about investing in business, but also realizing that connection to the actual transportation pieces that connect us to our businesses. So I'm going to pass this on to Kelly and Doug.
Great. Good morning, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today. Doug and I are here to talk a little bit about the broader picture in the North County area that are projects that will connect to these two that you've heard about now, as well as illustrate some other ones that the county will prioritize in the next coming few years, and talk a little bit about how they all sort of work together and the legislative process to make sure that that is the case. So we have a fairly significant transportation improvement plan. This is our 6-year plan. It's $167 million. That's huge. That's for the entire county, the unincorporated areas. We cannot do that all with our current resources of staffing. Many of us are really struggling to make sure we can hire the quality people that we need to deliver these projects. They're funded by various sources. So we too look to the state, Puget Sound Regional Council, our road levy and other things to help build these projects. And and our team is really fantastic about getting grant funding, whether it's through the federal infrastructure package or state transportation improvement board, public works trust fund. We want to make sure we leverage every single dollar that's coming in through the road levy so that we can build as many projects as we possibly can. So let's go to the next slide. So this particular map that you see illustrates where those projects are. This is again countywide. We're going to zoom in here shortly to look at the ones that are in North County, but they do support a wide range of things. When you look at the county, and when I look at the county and this particular map, you can really see that there's a lot of intensity in South County, but we also have quite a few projects in the North County. Doug, did you want to add anything about this particular slide?
I'll just point out that Mayor Nehring mentioned their 156th project that goes east and ties into 152nd. That triangle that you see right there is actually an intersection project that we have on the books to look at the intersection of 152nd and 67th and improve there, also in support of the CIC. And we've been coordinating closely with Marysville staff on traffic counts, et cetera, that will impact that. We also have projects along 140th. This is actually a preservation paving, but this is a little widening project right near I-5 at the south end that will help support traffic in and around that area. And those are active projects that we have on the books right now and in our 6-year tip.
And some of the shading that you see, sort of that ecru color there around the I-5 corridor and the Highway 9 corridor, that's the urban area of the county. And so, and much of that is incorporated, particularly the northern portions near Marysville and Arlington. There's been annexations over the years. So our focus for the county is in the urban and unincorporated rural portions of these areas. So as you might imagine, when you're driving somewhere, you go from one part of the county to another part of the county. You may be driving on a rural road and then driving on an urban road and then driving on a city road. And so we want to make sure that this network of roads is working well together. And we're also thinking about what kind of transit options there will be, how are we providing bicycle lanes as well as sidewalks. Now I want to shift over to our current projects. So Doug, do you want to talk about these?
Yeah, absolutely, Kelly. Thank you. So in our, for 2023 projects that we have in the area, I've highlighted them in yellow, is a preservation project north of Stanwood, but as you know, preserving our infrastructure so that people can move around on our system and access the areas they need to is very important. We also have a roundabout project that is a little east of this, but again, that's on our 84th corridor or Getchell Road that goes between SR 92 and SR 9. And both mayors mentioned the jobs created in these CIC. Well, people are going to have to live and commute in the area. And so these are important projects along the corridor. I didn't highlight the 84th Street spot safety improvements, but we also have that ongoing in the area to improve safety along that corridor for the traveling public. The projects down below, again, some of those are on our regional priority list, but others are priorities that the county has throughout the county. And that map that we showed you earlier, all of these projects are mapped on there with their individual coding. So, you know, these are scheduled. Some of these are scheduled for add earlier in the spring, construction this summer starting. But all of them that you see with an asterisk there, they are dependent on some with right-of-way acquisition and also permitting, which can, as everybody who's in the business knows, can add some time to your projects and getting them out to construction.
Yes, it does feel like sometimes we wait a really long time for these projects. So funding is one element of that. Certainly permitting, which lasts oftentimes a really long time. And then we do have to design to make sure that we're best understanding how we're impacting our communities, how we're impacting the environment, how we're going to mitigate those things. And then the actual construction. And that does take, you know, sometimes more than 6 years before you actually see some asphalt or concrete coming to your communities.
Yeah. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that the picture on the screen is actually 180th Street down in South County, but it won a APWA, American Public Works Association award that we'll be receiving later this year. So.
Okay, let's go to the next slide.
So what we did is a 2-year look. So projects going out to add for 2024. Some of these are second season, but you'll see the roundabout again at 84th and 163rd. But we also have Jordan Creek Bridge, which is out between Granite Falls and Arlington, and it's a bridge replacement project. And then 67th Northeast at 112th, that's further south on 67th, but it's a combination project with our Surface Water Management Division and Conservation and Natural Resources. And it's improving the drainage and culverts along the roadway at the south end of 67th. Again, all of those projects important to maintain and preserve so that people can use the system. Large project that we have, Granite Falls Bridge 102, is important for bringing natural resources in to build all of these projects. That replacement project received a RAISE grant of $22 million, and we're pushing that project to go to construction for 2025 season. It'll be a late add in 2024. That's why it shows up on this slide.
And those RAISE grant dollars are coming from the federal government with the great support of the delegation in the state of Washington and spearheaded by Senators Murray, Cantwell, and Representative Del Bene. And if you want a tour of any of these projects, we'd be happy to engage you in doing that kind of tour.
And then we brought up the top half of our regional project priority list. The green dots, unfortunately, that part's on the bottom, and we can supply anybody that wants that, let Gary know, and we can get that sent out to this group, the entire list. On the front page shows the projects. You see project 2 and 5, which were talked about today, had the Connecting Washington money for the SR 531 and the 156 interchange. The red ones are the current regional project priorities that we've developed through Snohomish County Tomorrow, SCIT, Snohomish County Committee for Improved Transportation, the Economic Alliance, and then and we work on this with our Infrastructure Coordinating Committee, which is representatives from all the cities, the ports, community transit, tribal, WashDOT, to come up with this list updated on an annual basis for these projects. And we'll probably get into questions later that we can go into this in more detail. We also have links here to our annual construction plan, our 6-year tip, and then the map that we showed earlier that indicates where all those projects are. For our staff and our program planning team is Matt Ojala and Sheila George, and their emails, as well as I know ours, are available if you have questions related to those. So with that, we can go into the question portion, and I'll stop sharing right now.
All right, I'm seeing a couple of questions come into the chat, so we'll start with those initial questions, and then we'll jump to some of our more stock questions that we have here. So first question, I think this was during Kelly and Doug's presentation, was from Joe Fletcher, who just quickly asked about Snohomish County bus system being integrated with King, Skagit, Whatcom County Park, and ride needs. So I'll leave it to Kelly to jump in on that.
Yeah, so Snohomish County itself doesn't run a transit system, but community transit does. Excellent partner in this community, provides transit service to outside of the boundary of the county, down into Seattle and farther north. There is Sound Transit building their network. So you'll see Sound Transit buses in and around Snohomish County. And Skagit County also has a bus service that comes in. I see your friend Rick Elgenfret sits here today too. Just excellent partners. Important that we have these integrated systems. It's not just about the roads. It is about transit. It is about providing the lanes that transit can utilize to continue to have that reliable service. It's also making sure that we have the bikeways to get to these various places and alternatives for walking as well, or rolling, and fantastic, great networks that our parks departments across the county and other places provide for trails that have this, and we see it as all an integrated network. So we all work really closely together to make sure that these systems function well.
And I'll add on our regional priority list, Project V is our community transit SWIFT BRT network. If you get a copy of that map and look closely, you'll see that over in our legend, we also have shading for all the BRT routes. Of course, the blue line that started in 09, green line in 19, and the orange line, which is under construction right now, which we've coordinated very closely with CT, so that because we have a NHS or National Highway System money to overlay that route. And so they're getting their work done ahead of us so that we don't have to have them overlay, us come tear theirs out and redo it. So it'll be a nice clean finish when we get that coordination effort done. And that's underway right now. And the overlay will be going on later this summer.
Awesome. I'll jump back and forth here. I do have a general question to each of you tied to your presentations, Mayor Nehring, Mayor Tolbert, Doug, and Kelly. What are the main factors that were considered in prioritizing transportation projects for the region? So I'll throw it to Mayor Tolbert first, and then Mayor Nehring, if you'd like to dive in.
So for the projects that we put forward as priorities, we look at the capacity, we look at the ability to be multimodal on roads. So can we have trails and bikes and people walking? We look at safety and congestion. And one of our challenges in Arlington is we're surrounded on all four sides by state highways. On three sides, they're 2-lane state highways without the ability to have walking, biking, adequate lighting for safety. So that not only constrains how our citizens can move through these corridors, but it also constrains public transit being available as well.
Excellent.
Yeah, and those are great ones. I would second what Mayor Tolbert said. I would maybe add in just a thought on we're a bedroom community. Marysville's largely a bedroom community. So we have to look at how do we get people in and out of the city efficiently. We also have a train problem in Marysville. So we try and get people around the trains, and where we've got some overcrossing projects we're trying to do there. And then finally, I would say, we do have an eye on the economic development. When you have 4,000 acres out in that Cascade Industrial Center that are developing, we want to make sure that doesn't increase congestion, increase safety issues and whatnot. So trying to be proactive about putting the infrastructure in so that we can get goods and services in and out of that area, as well as residents. And so I think all those feed in to what Mayor Tolbert said as well.
Thank you, Mayor Nehring. Kelly, Doug, county perspective?
Very similar criteria that we use, but add to that, we have rural roads. So if you think about the volumes are supposed to be in most ways lower volumes, you have technically less density out in the rural areas. And so, but we know where they're going to go. In many ways, they're going to where the jobs are, and the jobs are in the urban areas. So we think about the safety as well. They are, as Mayor Tolbert points out, 2-lane roads. So these are rural roads. So they have no shoulders. They have the ditches on the side that take care of the stormwater. So it's somewhat limited in that sense. Doug, do you want to add?
Yeah, as far as prioritization, we work closely with the Infrastructure Coordinating Committee, as I mentioned earlier, to look at all those aspects that both mayors talked about, and every city brings forward their top priorities to put on this list. We can't list every project. We have to keep it manageable. There's only so much room on the map, and then how we want to focus our discussions when we talk with our elected officials. But yeah, we're taking into account all of those aspects and looking to get our highest priority projects forward to support the economic development and the movement in the transportation system.
So speaking of priorities, we have a question from Randy, Digital Face Media. And this is tied to our second question as well, as far as timeline for completion on these projects that we have. And I think you showed just a little bit of a slide that kind of highlighted some elements of that. But Randall's question was tied to what are the most effective advocacy techniques to get the governor's office to restore construction timelines? So I'll just open that up to the group.
I have a thought.
Refer to the mayors.
I have a thought on that, Gary. I mean, I think in fairness, I think the governor, and his staff, I mean, I'm sure, the governor probably doesn't obviously know all these projects intimately statewide, but I think what they're looking at is a staffing shortage is one of the problems. And so they're saying, well, how do we staff all these? And I know at least, what we're doing with 156 is we're telling the state, well, we'll go ahead and provide the engineering staffing aspect of this if you keep the project timeline in place. So we'll take that responsibility on and do that. And I know, I think, there's some other projects maybe that can be done. But I do think, and this is just my opinion, and I do think the state legislature is going to have the final say in this. And I think our legislators understand the projects in their districts obviously much more closely. And I do think, though, there's a real broad-based thing that we all need to think of. You just take all the individual projects out. I mean, obviously, I'm passionate about 156 and 531 because those feed our Cascade Industrial Center. The county's got a whole host of other projects as well as those two. But let's just say you took all projects out. I think you have to think of what message does it send to business, to private sector business. These businesses are coming in from out of state in many cases. And you can't send the message that, boy, what if we pass another package that's funding stuff in the mid 2030s and 40s, and businesses say, well, yeah, but on the last one, investments were made and then you kicked it back 6 years. It really, those kind of things can be really damaging long-term to your ability to attract business into your region.
I would add to that, you kind of have to be the squeaky wheel in these kind of cases. These were commitments that were made, funding that was put into place, as Mayor Nehring pointed out, large investment made into the area. And what I really worry about is, 531 in the governor's budget was kicked down the road 8 years as well, too. There was a challenging road to get to this point in the process, ready to go out to bid the end of this year, first of next year. Because of the airport on one side, this had to go to the federal government, FAA, for approval in the design process of that. We're ready to go. And we've all seen what's happened with construction projects in the last 5 years in terms of the money needed to complete them. So my worry is that you push these projects out, there won't be enough money that's been allocated to complete the projects, which then, of course, is going to look for local investment or county investment to make these projects come to fruition. And it's not the deal that we understood was happening when we advocated so hard to include these important projects in the Connecting Washington package. So John and I have been very busy this legislative session, talking to our local legislators and everybody on the Transportation Committee to make them realize how far along the Cascade Industrial Center actually is. And we cannot keep growing jobs if we can't add public transportation and multimodal opportunities for our workers and for the freight that comes in and out of the Cascade Industrial Center.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mayor Nehring and Tolbert. Those are great comments. I guess in connection to what you just mentioned, Mayor Tolbert, you're linking this to also quality of life for folks who are accessing these pathways, those folks who are workers and also those residents in your communities as well, connecting all of these pieces to the business growth that's taking place. Do you have any thoughts collectively? And we can start with Kelly and Doug and then go back to Mayor Tolbert and then Mayor Nehring on what our local businesses that join us on this call and others should be doing to support these efforts. So.
Yeah, it's a big, audacious question, honestly. These are very expensive projects, no matter how you look at it. If it's today's dollars, tomorrow's dollars, years from now dollars, these are expensive projects and they're not getting less expensive. And, you know, we try to be the most efficient we can. We try to leverage the dollars that we can in the various pots that we're able to access, whether a city or a county or a transit agency. You know, we think we all do the very best that we can to leverage every nickel that we get, because it's hard to get them. And we try to keep them on track, whether that's legislative adjustments, you know, advocacy in Olympia, advocacy in DC, working really closely together, because if these projects don't integrate well together, we've not done a really good job. And I think this county is especially good. And I'm not talking about the county, I'm talking about the jurisdictions in this county do such a great job together. I mean, Doug leads the team of public works directors and others in this county. Every single month we talk about these things. It's really important to keep our eye on the timeliness of the delivery of these, because businesses do depend upon it. And what can businesses do? I think, you know, both mayors have done a really excellent job, as of the other mayors in this county, to, you know, have a voice and identify what the impacts will be if not done, or if not done in a timely fashion. So you know, there's the economic development, but there's also the safety component. You know, we collect a ton of data around this county, as do the cities, and we understand where the growth is. We also think about, you know, we've all experienced COVID in the last number of years. We've changed our driving patterns. We have changed the volumes, and during the day, what those volumes look like. And so thinking about how we evolve our systems to address those kinds of traffic patterns. Let's say I was asked a question last week about Amazon and deliveries, and think about how that's happened during COVID. You know, a lot of us get a lot of Amazon deliveries, and that's more trips on the road, although some trips have decreased because people are working from home. So it's a really interesting balance. How can businesses help stay involved with? Obviously, Economic Alliance can be a stronger advocate there in your local jurisdictions, in the roads that are going to impact your business. It might be your business is located in Arlington or Marysville or Monroe or Bothell, and yet you're probably still delivering services or goods in areas that are unincorporated. So engage with Doug and I as well, and with Executive Summers and the County Council. Each of these areas are incredibly important to make sure your interests and your positions are known.
Yeah, and I was going to add a commercial for Economic Alliance as well, because you can, how you can be involved is by engaging and Economic Alliance and SCIT, Snohomish County Committee for Improved Transportation. We talk about these on a monthly basis as well, outside of the Infrastructure Coordinating Committee that I chair. But it's an important place to get information on projects, know what's going on in the area. From the county's perspective, for our active projects, we have web pages where you can sign up for automatic updates, so that you can be aware of what's going on with those projects that are most important to you. But being engaged and giving input, and at those right moments, for times when we're asked to give comment on, say, budgets in Olympia, et cetera, it's very important.
Yeah, I would echo that. I think Kelly and Doug said it well. Businesses can be engaged by coming to the partnership table. Nothing in transportation happens without forming a strong partnership. And the stronger, broader your partnership is, the quicker your projects get realized, and you can spread, you know, what the advantages or benefits are of the project. So I encourage all businesses, you know, all of us, each of our jurisdictions, and every jurisdiction in Snohomish County has a time of the year where they put together their 6-year transportation improvement project. You know, that's where we need the input of the private industry. You know, have we picked the right priorities? What are your plans that we may or may not know about in terms of growth and development? How do your workers get to work? Where does your freight go when it leaves your factory? So if we will get the best product for Snohomish County overall if all of our transportation systems are integrated and give this smooth flow from urban through rural, you know, back to urban areas.
Okay. Mayor Nehring.
Yeah, I won't take much time, because I would agree with almost everything that's been said, or everything that's been said here. I would just say too, a little story about back in 2014, 15, when we've been referencing Connecting Washington. Well, EASC really was kind of the hub of the leadership effort there. we were really disorganized as a county, and we were headed for what would have been a real disaster with that package, not including a lot of projects in Snohomish County. Everybody, small business banded together, local government leaders, the county and Economic Alliance, was kind of the area where that all happened, and we all formed a alliance and brought a list of projects down there, and our legislators were able to stand strong for that list for Snohomish County, and that's what's resulted in the projects we're talking about today.
Awesome.
Gary, if I might add, all of us are underway with our comp plan updates too, comprehensive plan updates. And that's an important opportunity for businesses and residents alike to be engaged, know what's happening with these comp plan updates. We're doing it at the county level, they're doing it at the city levels, and looking at, we analyze the traffic as part of the transportation element based on the growth patterns that we're going to see. But giving input to your local agencies on those comp plan updates is very critical to get the best plan we can moving forward.
Outstanding. These are great comments for our business community to take in and make sure that we continue to partner, as Mayor Tolbert and Mayor Nehring mentioned. Additionally, we have a question from Joe Fletcher. It highlights with the growth of EVs and the electrical infrastructure, charging stations, et cetera, part of the plans or added later? So are they in part of the plans for growth or being added later?
So I think that's on an individual project basis, so to speak. One, you have to have that included in your scope of work when you go for grant funding. Some grants are requiring that, but it's, and I know there's been some news reports that, how do you set that up correctly so it's not a gift of public funds, et cetera. So pay for stations versus being able to just stop by and plug in for a while. But those are things that we're looking at. There are some specific grants for adding them after the fact, but if you can integrate them and at least get infrastructure in, being conduits, so that they can easily be added later, that's always a bonus.
Awesome.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would say, like, on these highways, on these corridors, you're looking at private investment in the EV infrastructure because it'll be in the businesses or parking areas off of that. So one thing that we can do is, make sure our development codes include having to put that infrastructure in. And you see many large employers, that is a part of their initial plans. They're planning for that. But it's a great question because it highlights how much, as Mayor Nehring said, when we plan these expansions for the corridor, when we were involved with EASC and advocating for the Forward Washington package, just how much has changed in our world until the projects actually get, concrete and asphalt on the ground. So sometimes they feel like a moving target.
Right. Kelly, I didn't want to leave you out if you had any other thoughts.
As the county is putting together a comprehensive plan, we think about the impacts of climate change, and both mayors, I'm sure, are thinking about this in their development regulations, but so is the county. So how do we do have development in the county that's business as well, and how are we going to incorporate those kinds of regulations? How do we think more holistically about this thing? So take a look at these comp plan amendments that are coming for each of the different elements, and I'm sure you'll have some thoughts about how to incorporate better and improved ideas about this.
Speaking of holistic, we have a question from Christine who says 51st Avenue, 152nd Street, 67th Ave provide important connection between CIC and the Centennial Trail. I know this in my German shorthand pointer note. We love this too. However, will road improvements in this area include safe, separated bike infrastructure? So I'll open that up. Mayor Nehring.
Yeah, it's a good question. And yes, what we've done in Marysville is for any new road improvements, we are adding bike lanes, curb gutter, sidewalks. So we are looking at that. So for those type of areas, we would look at improvements, including access for biking. And we realize that multimodal is a critical thing for getting around our community and getting in and out of our community, and for safety. So that is our plan, and has been our plan with some of the other new transportation projects that we've undertaken here in the past several years.
Okay, well, Mayor Tolbert, did you have any additions just as far as Arlington comes to mind?
I would say, I would echo exactly what Mayor Nehring said. Our plans also to require multimodal for any road developments. I mean, we know that we're a connecting place to all of these great places for quality of life and recreation and so forth. And so we not only have a road plan for the city of Arlington, we also have a trail plan. You know, we do envision that all these trails will be connected in some way in the future, so people can move fully through the whole community.
Can we speak briefly, unless you all wanted to add from the county perspective? Okay, can we speak briefly about the benefits to these projects a little deeper? How will these projects that we've talked about on the transportation level remedy some of the issues we've had or opportunities? So Mayor Tolbert and Nehring, you've talked about economic growth tied to them, but also can you speak a little bit to congestion and improve safety?
Yeah, yeah, I think that's really the key. I mean, economic growth is one of them, but these areas were congested already. Anybody who drives 531, you know, we'll see that, and 172nd interchange, both on the Marysville and Arlington side, very, very difficult. So the 156th interchange, actually, you know, I talked about how we built the overcrossing and all that. You know, but it was actually thought of, and even well before that, as an area to provide another on and off ramps, because, you know, to alleviate the problems at 172nd and also at 116th. And so I think it's just a natural place for an interchange. I think 531, anybody who drives that, you know, realizes that's got to be widened. And so I think it's safety, traffic congestion for the residents and small businesses and incoming businesses. And just the ability to move around communities. You know, when we look at growth management and at the rates of growth that we're being required as cities to take, Arlington and Marysville and the county, you've got to have the infrastructure that comes with that. I mean, we're taking massive amounts of residential growth, and that's required of us by the state. And so in some ways, you know, we're very, very appreciative of these transportation investments. But in some ways, they're really necessary in order to accommodate that growth. So I would say that that's the critical nature of it.
I would also say that for 531, it's going to allow us to add a more robust public transportation system. So it's a quality of life issue as well as it is congestion capacity and a business issue. You know, we all have people who live in our communities who don't have access to robust transportation opportunities. And if people are going to thrive and prosper, they have to have access to transportation opportunities to get to work, to get to their medical appointments or whatever it is. And so for me, it's really critical that we build out a public transportation system in Arlington as we transition out of a rural community into an urban community and a growing job center. You know, we look at bringing more people into our community during the day. And it would be great in my mind if they don't have to hop on 531 to go to lunch or to go to the grocery store or something, but that they have other alternatives there that can reduce further congestion on those roads.
Well said. Kelly?
Yeah, we look a lot at safety. You know, we have a lot of rural roads. So how are we reducing the possibility of accidents that might happen? You know, do we have some adjustments to speeds that are in particular areas? There are pockets every once in a while that have urban sections that might be up for having some sidewalks. It's not a standard we have in the rural area, it's more on the urban side. So we think about things slightly differently on the rural side because it's supposed to be a rural standard. So Doug, you want to elaborate more?
Yeah, and it's important that, you know, in that urban to rural transition, whether you're going to it or from it, is how do you accommodate that increased traffic in and around those areas in an appropriate, safe way? And so it's important for us to collaborate closely with the Arlington and Marysville staff on their traffic models and our county traffic model, and making sure that everybody's kind of looking at the same data and using that to analyze the needs, you know, as you do those transition areas. You know, 67th is we've talked about today, goes north and south between Marysville and Arlington, but it goes a long stretch through the county, and it's an old, you know, concrete panel roadway, sensitive areas, salmon bearing streams, you know, so you got all those critical, difficult things that you're looking at, but it's definitely a route that is going to be important as the CIC develops, and we'll be looking at options for that as well. So
outstanding. So turning the direction a little bit to the environment, and you've spoken briefly about quality of life, but connecting these transportation projects and the impact on the environment that it may have, positive or negative, as you decide to determine that, if they are not moved forward quickly to offset some of the major projections for population increases and growth in both Marysville and Arlington. Can we speak to the environmental impact of these projects? And I'll start with maybe Kelly, and then Mayor Tolbert and Mayor Nehring, and then Doug.
Anytime I think about or hear the word environment in this region, I think about our orcas and the struggle that they continue to have in the Puget Sound, and what is their food source. And those are the fish and essentially the salmon that are coming in through the rural areas and the urban areas. And how are we impacting those? And research in the last couple of years has really determined that it's impacted by tire dust. So anytime you think about roads, you're going to think about tires rolling. And how are we mitigating that impact in our road development or maintenance, even snow plow efforts that we have when we have our infrequent events that seem to paralyze our region? Like, how are we making sure that we're keeping the sand and the ice off the roads and out of our storm water detention facilities? How are we creating these stormwater detention facilities so that's going to take out the tire dust and clean it before it gets to our streams and our rivers and then out to the Puget Sound? So as we think about these things, and we don't have all the answers yet because it's just new research that has come out, and the permitting agencies are going to come up with the rules that we have to abide by. That is something we're going to have to do in a big sense, and that takes up more space and more land, and makes these projects just a little bit more difficult to deliver, but an important part of how we think about the design of these roads. And it's not just about the fish and the streams. You know, we oftentimes have to take trees out and shrubbery and a whole bunch of other things. So how are we thinking about the holistic approach to delivering these roadways that are so essential for our communities, but also have those impacts to our region?
Well said, Kelly. I think these are very complex issues that a lot of times aren't recognized by the people who want to use the roads and want the ice and snow off the road so that they can commute and, you know, want to drive their car through a corridor every day. So these are the challenges I think we face when we look at the design. One of the things about these road projects, though, it does allow us to make some corrections. So if we have culverts that aren't fish passable culverts, that can be part of the plan to upgrade these new areas and stuff. So I kind of look at it, you know, if we have creek alignments that have wandered over the years and are no longer serving the purpose that they were put in place for, we can make some corrections with it as we design the projects.
Yeah, that was going to be my point. There's two specific projects recently. Well, one that's already completed in Marysville, an expansion where we widened State Avenues. There's state money in that as well, and support from a large coalition. And that did repair a fish culvert, a fairly significant one. And then another one in connecting Washington that we're working on with Tulalip that will have a culvert replacement as well. So Mayor Tolbert makes a good point there as well. And that's one of the bigger statewide initiatives right now, is repairing some of those. So, but yeah, I would concur with what Kelly and Barb said.
Doug, you have anything to add to that, or?
no, I'm good. I think Kelly and Mayor Tolbert answered it very well. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Well, we're running down on time here, and so I want to make sure. Obviously, there's some comments in the chat box from some very prestigious folks here. We have Rick Ilgenfritz, who's mentioned a few things about the EV pieces and tied to PUD, and then we have Snohomish PUD Commissioner Rebecca Wolf, who's highlighted some additional comments tied to what Kelly has mentioned on the copper and brake pads creating major threat to the survival of the salmon. So just some things to highlight and notate here. Just some final questions for each of you. And then I want to leave a little time for our mayors to provide some final thoughts, as well as Kelly and Doug. tied to technology, and we've talked a little bit about EV elements here, but are there items in play to incorporate smart transportation solutions? And then I'm going to couple this with our overall goal. So I'm going to join this question together, Mayor Tolbert and Mayor Nehring, with the region evaluation of our transportation projects that we have listed. How will we measure their success as they are positive impact or negative or effectiveness, so to speak? So Mayor Tolbert, I know that's a lot to throw in there, but I'm gonna lead with you, and then Mayor Nehring follow up, and then Kelly and Doug.
Thank you, Gary. The two great questions, by the way, that probably garner answering more time than we have. So in terms of smart transportation, those things are advancing all the time, just like electrical vehicles are, and so there's a lot of technology that changes. We were probably most excited about the dumb improvements, if you can call it that, on this road, safe places for people to walk, more lighting, making a safe corridor that can be multimodal. So we're very excited about those. I'm not sure, smart transportation, we're taking out the lights and putting in roundabouts. So we're creating a place where traffic can flow continuously. So I'm not sure that I can add any more. If somebody has some great ideas for smart transportation that can fit in a project that's at, almost fully designed, let me know. Certainly would love to look at that. Forgot the second question you asked, Gary, in there.
This was tied to how we measure the effectiveness of the projects that we have listed.
Well, I'll measure it directly by the reduction in complaints of the congested corridor I get. So that'll be a straight one. I think it's going to be, the data will tell us if we're successful in keeping traffic moving and flowing through there and not backing up at certain intersections and so forth. I'll also measure the success by being able to see us move people on public transportation through that corridor. So those will be probably two key indicators for me.
Outstanding. Mayor Nehring.
Yeah, I think, traffic counts, and we have ways of determining, how many people are using these new roadways and interchange. And those traffic counts will tell us right away how much traffic we're diverting from other areas, right? The more people that use 156, we know we're diverting them, probably a lot of them, from 172nd, which is one of our worst congestion areas. So that'll be a real measure for success. And while, Mayor Tolbert brings up a good point, we're excited about the new Swift line that'll be coming up and serving our community. So as we get interchanges in, I think we're also going to look at, how many people are able now to access bus rapid transit in our communities. And that's a good thing. And then it might not be smart technology, but I did want to put a plug in for the design build. I think the state of Washington's done a really smart thing in the last several years. It probably really started with the Connecting Washington project, where they do design build projects all at once. I think it was Senator Haugen that kind of led that charge on that. And that's a way to realize more efficiencies and probably get projects done quicker as well. So it's not necessarily smart technology, but I think it's new thinking about how to do these kind of big projects.
Absolutely. Kelly and Doug?
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead, Doug.
Yeah, I was going to just mention that, with Growth Management Act, we all have concurrency that we have to measure by. So we're out there doing traffic counts, speed studies, data collection to ensure that the improvements that we're providing the correct improvements, but then monitoring those and making sure that we don't need to do, say, operational improvements again later. Roundabout corridors are great. We're also converting 84th Getchell Road to a roundabout corridor. But on corridors that have signals in place already, it may not be cost effective to transition to roundabouts. They are more expensive to put in. You got a bigger footprint right away, et cetera, but they're lower end maintenance on the long term. But we do have, like in the south part of the county, where we have signalized corridors, we've coordinated with WashDOT, Everett, Linwood, Mount Lake Terrace, Mill Creek, and Bothell in putting what's called an adaptive signal system in, and they're getting smarter all the time. And even though it doesn't get rid of the peak period or congestion, but it does smooth out that peak. And the signals can talk to each other in real time and let the signals down the road know that, hey, I've got this large platoon coming. So they speak to each other in real time, and that's kind of layman terms for me, but the computers are, they're doing that in the background, and we can also monitor those right in our office and actually adjust signal timing on the fly, so to speak, for signals that aren't necessarily in an adaptive system, but also that integrates TSP or transit signal priority to assist with community transit and buses. So it not only for the local service, but also for the BRT routes. So those are kind of some of the things that I would say that we're doing as a county and coordinating with our partners, partner agencies.
Kelly, you have the last word on this one.
We're constantly looking at the future of what technology we can use and look forward to sharing that with the region so that we can all adapt and optimize our throughput.
All right, well, folks, we're just at about time, but I do want to give our mayors a chance to just give the final word on anything that they'd just like to highlight that's going on, or just a final note of encouragement to our business community here. So Mayor Nehring and then Mayor Tolbert.
Yeah, thanks, Gary. Great program. Appreciate the opportunity to share a little bit. I would just say, I hear from a lot of citizens, and I absolutely understand this, and I thought it too before I was in elected office. They'll say, well, why does the development come and then you build the roads? And it's a great point, but it's a point that that needs to be stated, is that you can never get the funding for the roads until you show the level of service need. So cities like Arlington and Marysville can't build $50 million interchanges. We don't have that kind of budget. The citizens wouldn't want that type of property tax level, even if it was a possibility. And so what we have to show to our state and federal partners is a level of service problem that warrants these kind of projects. And unfortunately, that's just the way the system works. There's too many needs and too few dollars chasing those needs. So until you show that level of need, you don't get the dollars. So believe me, we would like to build them first too. We just can't get the funding until we can show that. Thank you,
Mayor Nehring. Mayor Tolbert.
That's a great point, Mayor Nehring, to point out. We often look at that when we talk about 531, this road from 1908 that was a 2-lane dirt road. It's in the same alignment today as we grow on it. When our businesses invest in growing there, there's no one who's going to pay enough mitigation to take the whole corridor and expand it to a 4-lane road, and it's not their responsibility. So the way we gather the funding for these road improvements forces to be the growth first, and then the road improvements happen afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
We have to take a look at it that way, and most people don't understand that. But the more that we can do. And then the other thing I'll just say that was a shock to me that I've learned being a mayor is that the state highways are exempt from concurrency. So if they don't have to grade themselves on the ability to move people through the roads, it really just throws the problem at the local jurisdiction in the county then to deal with. And so I'd love to see that change someday.
Well, Mayor, I'll caution you on that. That's a double-edged sword, because what that would do is, if a state route isn't concurrent, it would shut down economic development on your local street network.
True, but if there's some way we could phase it in,
it's got to be a balance.
Where at least the state could judge by how they're going to fund things, where they would have looked at the concurrency issues. Because you're right, to come in 80 years later or something and start doing it would be catastrophic.
Absolutely.
Well, folks, I want to thank you all for your time. I wanted to make sure I gave our mayors a chance to give some final updates, but obviously you've seen this is an amazing panel of leaders who are really serious about making sure that transportation priorities are met to support our business and our people in our communities in Marysville and Arlington and Snohomish County Public Works. I want to thank you all. We do have a quick reminder on today. Today we actually have from 11 a.m. To 1 p.m. a Snohomish County update with the Executive Dave Summers of Snohomish County. So Executive Dave Summers will be presenting at this time, and it's at the Future of Flight Payne Field. And so please, if you and can make it there, please show up. And we'd love to have you. This is an opportunity to hear from Executive Dave Summers on all things Snohomish County. Beyond that, though, we have this hosted by, and it's sponsored by Alaska Airlines and Herald Media. So I wanted to make sure that was a highlight. Thanks, William, for the flashback. And beyond that, we have another update, which is coming on. It's April 26th, and it's from 10:30 to 2 p.m. And this is the economic forecast and annual meeting. And we're going to actually have two amazing keynote presenters. One is Jeffrey Hill, who's a PhD research production person, who is going to talk about the ways to prevent food waste and reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And so this will be very interesting, kind of a hyper-local food to feed to farm loops. And then one of my friends who from a national setting is Zach Mannheimer, who's the founder and CEO of Alquist 3D. He's going to talk about 3D print housing, combating housing crises and best practices. And so this is something that you should not miss. Again, April 26th, 10:30 a.m. to 2 p.m. And we are excited for you all to join us for that. And last but not least, those of you who have remained with us, which we have almost 50 folks on screen with us, if you would put your cameras on, and we're going to go to gallery so we can show our amazing mayors and Kelly and Doug a thank you. We are going to grab our coffee cups or our drinks in solidarity. And what I would like all of you to think about is, if you have a nice car, if you have a business, if you have a home, if you have trails, you need transportation improvements, right? So everybody raise their cups up. Thank you all for being here. Have an amazing Tuesday. Thank you, Mayor Tolbert, Mayor Nehring, Doug, Kelly. Take care.
Thank you, Gary.
Thank you.